Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Aaron Dunn. I'm a composer, and figure I'd weigh in a little bit on the Rings of Power controversy in the upcoming series. And by controversy, I mean any number of things. Of course, if you're a Tolkien fan like I am, you obviously care about this thing, and obviously you want it to be good, and you want the story to be accurate, and or at least a good story, right? And of course for the lore to be respected. And of course this has all been a very contentious issue, being played out in the media, and even with some of the actors on the series and actresses on the series addressing some of the fans. I'll talk a little bit about that here. I'm not going to take a hardline stance either way. That is not my way. But before we get going, go ahead and check in the links down below here if you want to support my work. Down at SILMARILLIONsymphony.bandcamp.com. I write music based on the Silmarillion, which I feel like this is kind of something that's very dear to me. And so what we've got going on with this Rings of Power series, what the heck are we supposed to make of a lot of this, especially if you're a Tolkien fan, especially if you're somebody that's read the books a half dozen times in your life? Like, I've read the Silmarillion, I don't know how many times. So I feel like I have a command of the material pretty down pat, and understand at least some of the lore really well, and certainly maybe above average, let's say. So let's get into it. I'm just going to riff here and address a couple of things that I've seen just in the online banter, and that's really putting a nice label on it, because some of it's been straight vitriol, and I don't see that being a positive thing. All right, so I'll talk about the Tolkien lore purist side, let's say, and I don't know if that's the best characterization of people that like really, really understand it. Like, you've memorized the Book of Lost Tales kind of thing. Like, those kind of fans, I have to say, folks, I don't think this series is really written and marketed to you. It certainly doesn't feel like it's written or marketed to somebody like me who's really read the books. And the parallel I have for this is, actually I've spoken to some fans of Wheel of Time that understood the books really well, and what this certain gentleman relayed on to me, it's like, this really wasn't, they took some liberties, but me, being a person that doesn't understand Wheel of Time, my only reference for it is I know there are books, and secondly, I watched the series, and I actually enjoyed the series. But I know nothing about the actual way the worlds work as the author has intended. And I feel like Rings of Power is going to kind of follow that kind of a thing. It's like, it's going to work for a lot of people that really, they know who Tolkien is, and they maybe have read Lord of the Rings, or maybe read The Hobbit as a child. I read The Hobbit when I was in 7th grade, so that's been with me for a really long time. So maybe for the folks that are feeling really like, man, this is going to suck, this is going to be crap, they're going to dump all over Tolkien. Well, they might. To be honest, they may in fact just do whatever they want and tell their own story. And in a sense, I'll shed some light on what I think from a technical background that I can speak to about some of this stuff, because there's always decisions made in adaptations. And I think many people are aware of this. Yeah, I might as well just go into that now. So you're talking about an adaptation is really what it is. So we've got to understand there's certain things that, the show just doesn't have access to. And we've known this for a while, or at least the information's been out there. I think about a month ago, I thought maybe they had something from Unfinished Tales that they might be able to use, and that apparently isn't the case. And so some of the characters, I think, will probably suffer due to that, and the Second Age and stuff, things like that. Like, Galadriel's backstory is absolutely fascinating if you've been able to read the Unfinished Tales at all. And I think there's going to be none of that, because legally they can't. They might have be able to shade back into it via the appendices, which they do have access to, but a lot of backstory in these characters, they're just not going to have access to it. They also don't have access to the Silmarillion, so understanding that there's a Numenor element to the show, it would appear that you can't use the Fall of Numenor. That's at the back of the Silmarillion, which is a really fascinating piece. And I think, honestly, like the Akabelith, and I think I'm butchering the pronunciation on it, but there's a lot of really fascinating stuff in there that could speak to, you could speak culturally through that if you wanted to. All the stuff about, I'll just talk about it a little bit, like Sauron convinces the men of Numenor and the kings of Numenor to start sacrificing children. Well, we have some parallels about that in our common society, depending on which tack you want to take. And I'm not going to actually describe what I think it is, but you can figure it out for yourself. But, those human sacrifice elements, you're talking about a society, let's say maybe 3,000 years ago, where it was pretty common to kill children, sacrifice them to the god. The quote from the Akabelith is, Sauron essentially convinces the men to pray to Melkor that he would release them from death, and then they kill their kid. So that's lunacy, and it's very chilling. But again, this is material that I'm not sure how much they really have access to over at Amazon, and the showrunners I would assume, would be pretty aware. They would have at least read the story to get some of the vibe, I would hope. But that's something to think about. Is some of the best elements of Numenor that would set it up, I would think would be there. I can't imagine you pulling much from the appendices about that, other than a bunch of chronicles of genealogies and stuff like that. But anyway, so my tack, I'll leave it at this, is my takeaway is, I'll be watching the show, but I won't be having high expectations in terms of, how much lore do you really think you're going to get out of this when you don't really have that much right to much of, like, they have a lot, but they don't have all that backstory, Second Age stuff. If you take away the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales and the histories of Middle-earth, especially like Book of Lost Tales 1 and 2, and all the rest of it, you're going to lose out on cultural elements. If you read the Peoples of Middle-earth, which that's one of the History of Middle-earth books, there's 12 of them, that I have not read. I've been able to pick up snippets online and stuff like that, which describe the way these cultures are in Middle-earth. Well, if you don't have access to any of that, you have to invent. This is from a producing a film, producing a TV show kind of a background. I've done a few short films, some TV show pilots and stuff like that. And, you have to do a lot of different stuff to really make this stuff work on a screen, and make the characters communicate. And that's just before you actually get to actually hiring a cast, like to actually have a screenplay that works. There's a lot of work that has to go into that. And that's before you actually have the people come in and act and film them and costuming and everything else. It's like all this stuff definitely plays into it. And I'm sure many of you folks out there, whoever's watching this, we'll see. We'll see how many people watch this. I may not do another one of these, but I intend to. But you look at these things and it's like all the detail that's involved in this. Well, I certainly hope it's all correct. Some of the trailer stuff that I've seen, some of the I don't want to pick on the Galadriel stuff too much, but there's a lot of explaining to do. Let's put it like that. I'm intrigued. And you got to know that the marketing department at Amazon is like as professional, and I might even call it cynical. They know what's going to tick people off, and they know what's going to get people talking, and that's good marketing, honestly. Wouldn't you monetize that skill if you had it? I would. Hopefully I wouldn't be too cynical. But looking at Galadriel, it looks like she's got Fëanor's emblem on her armor. I don't know how that would work, to be honest with you. Unless it was, a gift from Celebrimbor or something like that, maybe something like that. And she just held her nose, because where else are you going to get armor in the Second Age? Why does she have armor in the first place? I know some folks are very critical of that. I'm just not going to take a stand on that either way. I do, as of right now, I love the books. And let's just make a point on Galadriel. And this is a very long, I'm about to wrap up, so forgive me. A point on Galadriel is her main power in the books, it would seem, has to do with wisdom, has to do with being farsighted and an intelligent operative, let's say political operative. The Cate Blanchett character doesn't come off like that, and that's fine with me, frankly. The way the book is very ethereal. And please consider that for you lore folks out there, and you all know this, and for those that don't, consider this, is that Galadriel lived in Doriath in the First Age and would have studied with Melian, who was a Maya, which is essentially like a Gandalf level of creature in Middle-earth. Now, that's a serious amount of magic to be hanging out with. So I would love to see more of that fleshed out in the story. I don't necessarily need Galadriel to have a sword, to be quite honest with you, because she learned some pretty cool stuff to begin with, especially with Melian, who was able to protect her realm and her husband's realm with essentially magic, a magic fence, a magic bush, or whatever, a magic hedge, however you want to look at it. Now, that's very intriguing to me. That's very different from like a Xena warrior princess thing, which is sort of what it seems to be alluding to in this story on Rings of Prime or Rings of Power, whatever you want to call it. So looking at that, it's like there's going to be some stuff they're going to need to explain with her character. Where is Celeborn is another one, because she married him in the First Age. And that would be what? Like, are they starting right at the beginning of the Second Age, or are they starting, midway through? Because you're not just going to bail out on your spouse of 1,000 years, I don't think. And given the way Tolkien wrote everything, I don't think anybody's really bailing on their spouse all that much, other than Feanor, who they can't talk about. So, all that said, my posture towards it, and especially with many adaptations, it's like, I did sit through The Hobbit, and I didn't love a lot of the decisions that were made there. Is it still watchable? Sure. Are there other machinations behind the scenes that stop creative people from actually doing what they want? Yes. But, you still end up with a movie, you still end up with a TV show where maybe you get to enjoy being somewhat back in Tolkien's world, let's say. And I have to say, me personally, I appreciate that. And so that's probably why I'll be watching. Will I expect the kind of lore that I would enjoy? Like, for me, honestly, again, check out some of my work down below. You can see some of the things I've done on Finrod or on the Fall of Gondolin. I've got some Beren and Luthien stuff. I've got a lot of stuff chronicling bits of the First Age. And it's kind of shocking. It's been about 8 years since my first recording session with all of that as well, which is a really amazing thing to be thinking about. It's been a while. I'm working on a mix for something right now that's much the same as Silmarillion Symphony stuff, and I'm really excited about it. But those adaptations, that stuff, there's just so much that goes into it, and I think it bears repeating or even just stating for me the first time, but it's something I'd tell anybody anyway, which is to, try and be a little bit intellectually generous with this. Just a little bit, maybe a little bit more than you're comfortable with, and you might enjoy it. But for me, I'll be waiting, and I'll be enjoying some of it. I'll be not enjoying some of it, and again, I already know I'm not going to get what I want out of it. Like, I'd like a full Fall of Gondolin on the screen kind of thing, or Battle of Unnumbered Tears. How do you put that on a screen? Like, it's bigger than Helm's Deep, and that's already pretty huge. Anyway, so I'll be holding my breath and holding in some words until after I've actually watched it, because the trailers left many unanswered questions. Does it feel quite like Tolkien? Does it feel quite right? Not right now, I wouldn't say. Not to me. It doesn't feel quite like what I pictured it, but no trailer ever is like that. And the trailer isn't in the entire production. So all that said, I'll sign off for now. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you like. And please do have a look at some of the links down below if you want to support my work with the Silmarillion Symphony and all the composing I do for that. So thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the show on Friday if you watch it. Thanks very much.